The Islamic Republic is saying, well, parts of the Islamic Republic. This is what everybody is getting wrong. The news is telling the Islamic Republic has reimposed restrictions on the Strait of Hormuz. What they're not explaining very well is the division within the Islamic Republic right now. They're acting like the Islamic Republic is just one thing and they're basically making decisions as one entity. But as I mentioned to you earlier in our previous discussions, that there was already a lot of internal divisions within the IRGC, and now we're seeing more of it being, you know, coming to the surface. So let me show you the news, and then I'll tell you what I think is happening. And this is something that many people are not really understanding. Okay, so here, a couple of hours ago, we got this news saying breaking Iran reimposed restrictions on the Strait of Hormuz, revisiting its decision to reopen the waterway after President Trump said the move would not end the blockade, according to the Associated Press. Iran's Joint Military Command said control of the Strait of Hormuz has returned to its previous state under strict management and control of the armed forces, adding it will keep restrictions in place as long as the U.S. blocks Iranian ports, right? So it's very interesting because the there's three different types of messages that are going out there right now. It's one by the Islamic Republic, the parts of the IRGC that is being very flexible to President Trump. Two of the messaging is coming from them, and then there are parts of the IRGC that don't want to be flexible to President Trump, and there's a messaging that is coming from them, right? So the parts of IRGC that wants to be flexible, they're telling President Trump that we are going to give, many of the things that President Trump has demanded. But they also, I think, told President Trump that for their own internal followers, they have to actually show that they're being inflexible. So those are the two types of messaging that is coming from them. But there are other parts of IRGC that don't want to really be flexible with President Trump, and they're trying to sabotage. They're trying to basically stop the part of the IRGC that wants to bend to President Trump. They're trying to stop that from happening, right? And let me show you what that looks like. There's two interesting things that I would. Okay, so let me show you two audio messages that maybe clarify. So the first audio I'm going to show you is IRGC Navy on channel 16 broadcasting this to the Strait of Hormuz. So this is IRGC Navy
in Persian Gulf and Oman Sea. This is Iranian Sepah Navy calling you on channel 16.
So Sepah is IRGC.
In Persian Gulf and Oman Sea. This is Iranian Sepah Navy calling you on channel 16. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. We will open it by the order of our leader Imam Khamenei, not by the tweets of some idiots.
So not by the tweets of some idiots. They might be talking about that as well. We don't know whether they're talking about Trump or IRGC. It could be IRGC.
Not by the tweets of some idiots. If you want to pass through the strait, you must ask permission from Iranian Sepah Navy. All vessels that have a connection with our enemies will be targeted if they try to pass the Strait of Hormuz out.
So there was that, and then there's this amazing. So this is an Indian ship, the Sanmar Herald. It was, look at the path. They were trying to go through the Strait of Hormuz. They went back a little bit, and then they made like, guys, I don't know if the red means, is this the speed coming? Like, does it get closer to red when they're speeding up? Let me know. But then they all of a sudden went straight to trying to go through the Strait of Hormuz, and then they went back. So look at the audio message here. So what was happening is apparently they got a clearance from the IRGC, from Sepah, and then while they were leaving, they started being shot at by the IRGC, and then they went back. They did a 180. I was like, oh, we got a clearance, but now we're being shot at. So listen to the message that the Indian vessel is now communicating with IRGC. Listen to this.
Sepah Navy. This is Motoranga Sanmar Herald. You gave me clearance to go. My name second on your list. You gave me clearance to go. You are fighting now. Let me turn back.
This is incredible. Just one more time. Like, this is crazy.
Sepah Navy. This is Motoranga Sanmar Herald. You gave me clearance to go. My name second on your list. You gave me clearance to go. You are fighting now. Let me turn back.
So to me, this is signs of major internal divisions. Like this is a major evidence for everything that I've been saying, not just from in the past 40 days or so, but on the past 5 years is now finally coming true, which is basically shows the internal divisions that I have been talking about. And I've been talking about this has been my theory for 5 years, that this is the Achilles heel of the IRGC, of the Islamic Republic. And now we're saying like what so many missiles and drones could not do, all of a sudden this ceasefire is doing. Because when you get clearance from IRGC and then IRGC starts shooting at you, to my interpretation is that the reason for that happening is because the IRGC that gave you clearance is not the IRGC that is shooting at you, right? But look at this. President Trump also understood this. This was very key. Look at this.
You told me on the phone earlier that everything has been agreed to. You told me earlier that everything has been agreed to. Iran was saying something different. So, what has been worked out in that time?
What? Say something different because they have people that they have to cater to. Also, I really don't. I'm just doing the thing that's right. I'm just saying it like it is. And we have a situation, I think, that is going to be very beneficial. And the main thing is that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. You cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon, and that supersedes everything else.
So let me actually interpret what he said here. By the way, guys, put twos in the chat if you want to ask me questions about this specific topic, if you want to ask questions about this specific part. But to me, and I want to see if you guys agree with me or not, because here, President Trump makes it very like this is the first time that we're getting this clear of a message from President Trump that confirms everything else that we have been telling you. That the IRGC, what they're telling President Trump is different from what at least the part of IRGC that is talking to President Trump. What they're saying internally is different because they have to cater to certain people internally. This is exactly what we have been repeating here many times, and now President Trump is confirming that, because the reporter were asking him, why is what you're saying the Islamic Republic is agreeing to different from what they're saying publicly? And President Trump is saying they have to cater to their own people, right? But there's something that I think a lot of people didn't notice, and I don't know if I'm reading too much into this or not, but look at this. Okay, so he says, right after he says they have their own people that they have to cater to, he says something else.
You told me on the phone earlier that everything has been agreed to. You told me earlier that everything has been agreed to. Iran was saying something different. So, what has been worked out in that time?
What? Say something different because they have people that they have to cater to.
So they have people they have to cater to. Before I play this next part, I said if I was the IRGC or whoever is talking to President Trump, what I would be telling President Trump is two things. I would tell him to basically understand that I need to go internally and tell people something complete opposite of what I'm telling you. And I will try to explain the internal dynamics of the situation that I'm dealing with so that President Trump doesn't get angry when they read our tweets or our messaging. That's number one. And number two, and I think this is why President Trump now has this understanding. But number two, I would also be telling him that please, for the love of God, don't say this publicly. Don't tell people how flexible I'm being with you, right? And I think President Trump understands the first part, but he's not agreeing to the second part. And he just comes out and says these things. And these the people within IRGC are like, what the fuck? Why is this? Why does he not keep these parts secret? And for us, this is amazing because it's basically causing a lot of internal division within the Islamic Republic. They're basically panicking. And now that they saw that the Strait of Hormuz did get open, for a while at least, they're thinking, many regime supporters are thinking, is President Trump telling the truth regarding how flexible some people within the higher ups are? And it's basically making them panic. So listen to the second part.
Also, I really don't. I'm just doing the thing that's right. I'm just saying it like it is.
I'm just doing the thing that is right. I'm saying it like it is. I think a lot of people didn't think this part was significant, but to me, right after he said they are like, I think these two parts were related, because when he says doing what is right, I'm saying it as it is, as it is. I think all these three parts are connected. He says they're catering to the people inside, and then he stopped for himself from saying what he was going to say, and then it says, "I'm doing what is right. I'm saying it like it is." These two are related in the sense that I think he was told not to say this, and when he says, "I'm doing what's right, I'm saying it like it is." So I think right after he said they're catering to the people, like he has been asked by the Islamic Republic as part of the conditions of them being this flexible to not make this public. And he's saying, I think what he's saying here is like, is that he thinks saying it the way it is the right thing to do. That's what I think he's saying. He's doing here, thinking that making this public is the right thing to do. And to me, this suggests that maybe what I would have done as IRGC is actually what's happening. He has been told not to say this part out, but he is saying this part out because of the second part that I just played, right? And just again to get it before I get to you guys, let me just also say that nobody really knows who's in charge right now. Like who's like we know who are the people who are in charge, we just don't know who has the upper hand. Okay, so the obvious people who are in charge is Ghalibaf, but it seems like it's semi confirmed that he doesn't have the upper hand, because and this is what I expected as well. I mentioned this before, but JD Vance coming from Islamabad, he said that Ghalibaf had to basically ask permission from somebody. He had to like he seemed like he was not in charge. It seemed like Ghalibaf was not in charge, right? So it makes sense because Ghalibaf seems to have some control over the state media, and also using the state media to make the claim that Mujtaba is giving Ghalibaf his blessing to do whatever he's doing, but he doesn't have the guns. So that's why it makes sense why he might not be the person with the upper hand. So if we want to come to the upper hand, people with the upper hand, we have to come to the IRGC. And basically, the main candidates are Ahmad Vahidi, Hossein Nejad, or Zolgar. I used to also mention Abdullahi because he's the head of the Khatam al Anbiya, but Murad Vaisi thinks that he's probably doesn't have the upper hand because he's only a military figure and he's not a security and political figure. So Murad Vaisi doesn't think that he might have the upper hand. So, and Murad Vaisi really understands the internal politics of the IRGC. So I'll go with that. Another last point I want to make before I go to you guys. I mean, I think one person put a two in the chat. Again, if you have questions regarding this, put twos in the chat. One last point is that this whole internal division within IRGC is possible because of this guy's design, right? So Muhammad Ali Jafari, who's an enemy of Ghalibaf, by the way, a couple of years ago, many years ago, he was the head of IRGC, and he had this design for IRGC, which is a mosaic design. Mosaic design means that if you go all the way here, if you look at this 32 number here, the 32 provincial IRGC commanders, what he did is that he made the commanders, different commanders of IRGC all over Iran to be somewhat independent, meaning that they could make decisions on their own. They created this flat structure where they could basically work independently without commands from the higher ups. And that but at the beginning of the Operation Epic Fury, it seemed like this design was genius. The reason why this design looked genius was because even though you killed so many of the IRGC leaders, the IRGC was continuing to do its things, throwing missiles, doing whatever it needs to do without, even though the commanders were being killed, because of this mosaic independent structure that Jafari had designed. So that's ended up looking like it was a really great idea. However, now as we move forward, because these different commanders of IRGC are semi-independent, what happens is that we have internal conflict and everybody is doing their own thing, and now they're taking positions against each other, and you don't have somebody that could basically get them all on the same page. The only person that used to have to make them get them all on the same page was Ali Khamenei, and he's dead. It would be very good right now if Khamenei his beauty sleep, if he's like alive or not, so that maybe his messaging could put them all in line. But because there's Mujtaba Khamenei is nowhere to be seen, I mean, this is like it really, they're struggling to be united. So there is cracked, like we say. This all suggests that we have like the internal cracks are, expanding. And again, as I mentioned, that this division is helping us get closer to weakening the Islamic Republic more than the military operations. So this is, we're moving in the right direction. Anyways, I'm gonna stop talking so that you guys get to speak. Sorry if that went too long. I just wanted to make sure that everybody is on the same page here and understanding what's going on. Okay, let's go to you guys.
Okay, first we have a response from Sadato.
Sadato.
Hey, Armin.
Hey.
Okay, how do we know that the moderates like Galibaf and like hardliners like Vahidi is not using the moderates as like a good cop, bad cop kind of thing to maybe, give them time to regroup or whatever? The messaging, the hardline messaging is for the people, like you're saying, the 5% crazies, yahoos out there. But internally, is it possible that they're not as fractured, but they're just kind of playing that good cop, bad cop game, the controlled. Although I think Galibaf is probably ultimately would get thrown under the bus. Is it possible that he's being utilized by the hardliners?
As you know, like I know you know this, but for the sake of everyone else, these people are so-called moderates and so-called reformers. None of these people are moderate or reforming in any way, right? And in the traditional classification of who's a hardliner and who's a moderate, Ghalibaf falls under the hardliners, not under the moderates. Araqchi falls under the hard reformers, but not Ghalibaf. Okay, and the so-called reformers or moderates are there to be scapegoat and take the bullets so that the actually more important people could survive. The problem is Ghalibaf doesn't want to be anyone's scapegoat. Ghalibaf has the ambitions to basically be the main guy after all of this is settled, to be the main person in charge within the Islamic Republic. So he is not willing to be the person who is used by somebody by Vahidi and then be thrown under the bus or be pushed aside later. He like that is a cost that he's not willing to pay. He's the person that does that to other people. He's not a person that would allow other people to do that to him.
So then, how would Galibaf ever coalesce the 5% of the population? Like how would he possibly, after these negotiations and so forth, how would he ever consolidate? Oh, you were saying that would be through force, through the foreign, because I think you mentioned that like some of these Iraqi and other foreign kind of, not peacekeepers, but the guys coming in from other countries on the streets, that they were actually
Right.
for the 5%, as well as obviously the Iranian populace, but also to keep order with the radicals.
So this is actually going to be answering a multi-decade question in Iran, right? Because the Islamic Republic, the people who work for the Islamic Republic and suppress and kill for the Islamic Republic, there's, if you want to simplify it, there's two motivations, okay? Either you get paid, is because you're getting paid, or because you believe in the ideology, right? So you have the ideology as a way to mobilize people, and you have money to mobilize people, right? And for the past, like for multiple decades, these were aligned, right? But the problem with the ideology is that the ideology is rigid, right? When you tell people that these crazy, messianic religious ideology, eventually when you need to change direction, you have brainwashed them that this is the right way for so many years that they're not going to switch with you, right? Even if you want to completely change direction. So now when the Islamic Republic needs to be flexible, we're going to see there are parts of the IRGC that want to continue weaponizing the ideology, be loyal to the people who believe in this and want to continue the same path, and the people, and that is their weapon. And then there are other people who want to say like, yeah, no, if we're bankrupt and we have no money, we're not going to be able to have enough forces to continue controlling the country, right? So the blockade that President Trump is putting on the Iranian ports is now bringing this question, like we now finally need to have answered this question. If I am Alibaba, I have to start betting which one would be more devastating. If the revenue is completely cut and I can't pay people to kill for me, am I going to lose more people from that? Or if I betray the ideology of the Islamic Republic, am I going to lose more people from that? Right? So at some point, look, you could keep lying to the people regarding what's happening behind the scenes, but at some point it will be clear what's happening. Like you can't hide this forever. Like if President Trump is like right and they are actually going to take out the enriched uranium themselves, like they're going to cooperate with the Americans, then there's no amount of lies that you could now tell the regime supporters that will excuse that. Like they could see, like, okay, you have betrayed the revolution, the Islamic revolution, right? But is that more devastating to you than you not being able to sell the oil and gas and not being able to pay people? So we have to see how much these people are they more ideologically motivated to work for the Islamic Republic or financially motivated to work for the Islamic Republic. And I think they're more financially motivated to work for the Islamic Republic, even though their ideology also is in the same path. But I think it's always comes out to money. Mostly it mostly comes down to money. Like I think you will lose more if you can't pay people. So I think Ghalibaf is going to make the right decision. Maybe like he's not that stupid. That okay, like I rather sacrifice the revolution and keep the money rather than sacrificing the money to save the revolution, right? But for that to work, now with all this money, I have to pay mercenaries to shut these people up, right? Like that would be the obvious solution. So if I'm basically sacrificing the revolution and so many pro-regime people are going to turn against me as well, then I need to make sure that the money model works. I need to make sure that now I keep paying as many mercenaries as possible to shut everyone up, in not just the anti-regime Iranians, but the pro-regime Iranians as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jeffrey is next to respond.
I'm going to revisit one of the points that was brought up, and it's a very significant point, particularly with regards to where we go here in the next stages of liberating Iran. So when like the idea of, or like the Mullah regime's notions of what they call Mosaic Defense was actually adopted from U.S. Mosaic warfare that was in the latter middle stages of the global war on terror, right? We came up with Mosaic warfare. So we had net-centric warfare in the late 90s, early 2000s. That's what was applied to Saddam Hussein that started like bomb target, destroy nodes and all that. And so, as the bad guys learned, we evolved too. So we kind of developed from net-centric warfare, Mosaic warfare. Mosaic warfare is kind of a high-tech offensive concept that uses things like AI, networking, modular systems, drone sensors, manned platforms. You see how, U.S. assistance to Ukraine setting up their stuff is applying it against, say, Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state. So with regards to that, the Mullah regime strategist at the time, particularly General Mohammed Jafari, I always fuck their names up. He was the head of the IRGC Center for Strategic Studies. He closely studied the U.S. military campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq. And so what they determined is from what he drew from that was a direct conclusion: never put all your power in one vulnerable center. So Jafari and the IRGC formally began developing what they called Mosaic Defense, and they reorganized the IRGC around, help me out here, Armin, I think it's 31 semi-independent provisional commands. Well, it was like Tehran plus 30. Each
32.
tile has 32. Thanks. Yes, I don't know if it was one or two. That the copy's working. Each tile kind of has its own weapon stockpiles, missiles, drones, logistics, on and on and on. This is actually something that Ariachi had openly admitted in 2026. So what does that mean? It means essentially the Mullah regime's Mosaic Defense is a low-tech defensive regime survival doctrine that decentralizes human command and control so they can absorb massive shocks and continued asymmetric resistance. The negatives of that, though, is it becomes very, very hard to coordinate efforts throughout everything, especially when we paralyze like all your command and control communication. So what is that? Why is that significant? A couple of key things, 3 things, and then I'll turn it over. One is the 2 key concepts that I keep trying to hammer home for the anti-Mullah diaspora, which is the environment is defined as a complex adaptive system, meaning it's fluid and ever changing, and your adversaries are learning, right? That's competitive adaptation. And that the Mosaic Defense is something that the regime remnants are almost as surely going to try and leverage to maintain their survival as long as possible during the post-Mullah regime, like remnant cleanup phase of liberating Iran. And so, like the anti-Mullah diaspora, when it's setting up its Track 2 material support networks and all the rest of that, to like clean them out. In other words, training cadre, training the trainers, training the operatives to do neo-Savak kind of counterinsurgency and start killing all the regime remnants throughout Iran. Need to incorporate that into their overall training, which is why Armin, well, I and Armin both push for things like, yeah, you know, there's a couple of people, groups of people that know how to do that, like Green Berets and or special operations, Ukrainian special forces, all of those kinds of things. It also underwrites why you have to have, like the broader anti-Mullah diaspora has to now focus, add an additional line of effort, which is to raise money to set up self-sustaining nodes to train and provide legal, non-lesser and kinetic material support for those anti-Mullah elements so that we can eliminate the rest of these Mullah regime bastards.